All right, and we are officially live. We are 100% live. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for showing up here. We're going to give probably about the next few moments, probably about a minute or so, to let some folks trickle on in the room. In the meantime, as I do, if you've been here before, you'll probably know what I'm going to ask here. If you can see and hear me fine, please use the chat. By the way, the chat in this session here is our communication tool. So please just drop yeah, no, or just type any letter, just making me know that you can see and hear me. And again, the reason for this is I've talked my head off, and for some other glitch or some technical reason, folks weren't able to see or hear. So I just want to make sure that's out of the way. And in case you see me kind of bobbing and weaving here, I got two computers here. Usually our moderator is here, but unfortunately, she's not today. So I'm going to be doing both the presentation and the moderation. So as a result, I'm going to be kind of hopping and back and forth a bit. So I see you guys, folks. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thanks. Now that I know I'm being seen and heard, welcome once again. I am going to just pop a couple things up here. Okay. So, welcome again to Where to Get Started with Data, and specifically data analytics. Uh, I'm going to walk you through what the format of the session is in 1 second here, but we're going to learn a few things here together. Okay. All right. So, where to get started with data. So first and foremost, I want to say a big thanks for all of the folks that inspired this stream here. And this stream actually came about from a question that we asked where, what was the most preventative thing that gets you involved with data? Is it, what basically prevents you from having or pursuing this as an option? And the number one thing that came back is folks simply didn't know where to start, right? So that's what this whole session is about. So thanks again to the folks who inspired this session. And we're going to walk you through step by step what that looks like. Okay. All right. So in the next 30 to 45 minutes or so, we're going to walk through a few things. First, my journey in data, the three core skill sets that you need to basically command the thing called data analytics, the recommended courses that are going to get you there, and we're going to have a question and answer segment at the end. Okay. All right. So that's just a general format, and I'll be popping in and off of the screen like this, like so, just to make sure that I'm, just connected with you guys. Okay. So who the heck am I? All right. Well, my name is Walter, and I'm best known for being a data analytics subject matter expert. I'm also best known for a best-selling book that's been out there for a few years on Amazon. It's the #1 bestseller in SQL and data analytics. I've also established partnerships with LinkedIn Learning, Microsoft Learn, and working on my second book on data analytics. And I've been doing this for about 20 years or so, 20 years in the field. So brief summary about who it is in front of you talking. And that's me in a nutshell. Okay. So, as I said, I'm going to be popping in and out like this. Now that you know just a little bit about me, I'd like to know a little bit about you. Okay. So, again, the chat is our communication method here, short of just plain old speaking to each other. So, in the chat, please respond A, B, C, or D to give me a better sense of who's in the room. So, A, you're a beginner with absolutely no experience. You're in the right place. You want a career as a data analyst. B, C, you're a professional looking to upskill, just get sharper and better at analyzing data if you're already in a programming track. And you just want to be better prepared. D. So A, B, C, or D. Just drop that in the chat for me. That's actually going to help me a lot in terms of knowing who's in the room, number one, but also how to tailor this next 30 to 45 minutes here so that you get the most value. So I'm speaking to the folks that are primarily in the room, even though everybody else is going to get some value out of this. Okay. All right. I'm going to as I mentioned. Okay, I see some B's, I see some A's. Awesome. B and C. Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. That's great. That really helps a lot. Leela, I see you. Thank you. All right. A lot of A's, B's, and C's. Sort of like an even keel. So that's good. That's really good for me to know. Super helpful. One other curious thing before I go on to the next page is I'm tuning in from Miami, pretty close to Miami, about 20 minutes out of the city. Where are you tuning in from? Just give me a sense of where you're from. It could be country, place, just where are you tuning in from, and just to get a sense of who's in the room and where you're from. Okay. All right. Just drop that in the chat again, and I'm going to kind of push on through and just peep and see who's in the room. Okay. All right. Thank you for letting me know who's around. I'm going to pop on out here. So now that you know a little bit about me, I know a little bit more about you. Why is this even important? Why do you even bother to know this thing called data analytics, right? Well, here are a few facts that are important, kind of tune you in as to the significance of this skill set. So about 94% of companies say that data is essential. Keyword essential. It's not a nice to have. It's not, hey, I think we'll try this on for a little while. It's essential to being successful in business today, 2022. Data analytics is the most in-demand role of 2022. And again, this is a monster trend report, and I'm not just inventing numbers here, right? And the third point is this is a growing field, a great time to get into it. The market projection as far as the growth of this field is projected to be 132 billion by 2026, which isn't that far away, right? So it gives you a sense of the volume of growth that is embedded in this particular skill set. A great time to get involved and to skill up with this. Okay. All right. Pushing forward. I'm going to just get into some house rules, and I'm going to check to see who's from where again. Basic things. Okay. Nothing complicated here. I'm going to pop on here. One of the things that I wanted to mention is, I am going to be imparting some knowledge that is going to be very helpful, but none of what I'm doing is magic. It really takes, sort of a cohesive effort, right? So my intention is to give you knowledge so that you can actually take up and be actionable about that knowledge. Okay. But it does take effort on both our ends. No false intentions, just showing up as you are for what you want to do and just being respectful of each other, right? Just basic rules, again, just to get the right energy in the room here. Okay. All right. Are you actually getting value? And I want to let you know right now that I am leveraging my 20 years to actually put it into this material with the intention of making it digestible and far from complex, which was my experience in learning this stuff. So rest assured, I'm actually converting all of these years and experiences and ups and downs into a distilled, actionable, valuable package so that you could actually take some action on it. Okay, that's my promise. All right, let's move forward. Now, I told you a little bit about myself, but let me get into a little bit deeper about my story a bit. I think it's important just to let you know what motivates me for showing up here and doing this. Okay. So, for the folks who may or may not know, I am from a little island called Trinidad and Tobago. It's right there. And, growing up in Trinidad, it was a rough neighborhood, right? It came with its full sets of challenges, at least the neighborhood that I grew up with. And throughout it all, what really anchored me was my mom, right? My mom was my rock, my staple. And a lot of what she used to actually uh, give me that stability is education. She actually used education as a catalyst for change, not only in her own life, but in my life as well. So around 22 years old, I came to the United States, take that little green journey, landed in New York and went to school, right? Came to pursue my bachelor's degree in computer science and was all about the education inspired by my mom, right? Okay, so that was my first step into the journey here. And after that, I was really felt like I was living the American dream. So I graduated, went to school, graduated, started to work as an intern at the MTA, Metropolitan Transportation Authority in New York City. Uh, and I had my first job. I just graduated. I was making some money, and I was finally able to give some money back to my parents, who was responsible for me being in the position that I was in. So I truly felt like I was living the American dream at that point. Okay, so didn't take too long before everything changed, right? So after working for a while, I got some news that my mom was sick, right? She was diagnosed with liver cancer, and from the time of her diagnosis to about a year later, my mom had passed away. Okay, and that really, really drove home a lot of things for me, right? And to add insult to injury, my contract that same year ended, and I really found myself in a place asking, well, hey, what's actually next for me here? Really felt like, I really was at a lost space. Okay, so then this time of being off and just mourning the loss of my mom, it really gave me some time to think, and I thought a lot about what my purpose was. What actually was I giving value to this world? What form was that taking? What became really clear from these thoughts is that life is indeed short. And I was really clear on how my mom led her life, which was a passion driven life, right? So it made me examine my own passions. And I realized, well, wait a minute, like I actually have a passion for helping others. I had always been that go to person at work, wherever I worked, that people would seek to find out about databases, about data, about SQL, about analysis. And I actually enjoyed this. So I explored it a little bit more and made it a little more formal. I opened a meetup group. I told that meetup group, hey, I'm going to be in this coffee shop in Tribeca. I want to say big respect to Gotan Coffee in Tribeca was the beginnings of all of this. And I said, hey, if you want to learn about data, analytics, about SQL, I'm the dude with the red laptop. Tap me on the shoulder. I'll be glad to help you. So at that point, things really changed. The coffee shop was full. I started having weekly meetups. I established relationships with Capital One Bank and had conferences in their sessions. And then this really started something, right? I really got in tune with, yes, this is my purpose. People are being helped. Lo and behold, fast forward a little, my best-selling book was developed. I now have relationships, like I mentioned, with LinkedIn Learning, Microsoft Learn. I have a course on LinkedIn Learning and doing things with Power BI with Microsoft Learn. And I stand before you here really a lot more in touch with my passion, and as the latest episode of me really dedicating my life to a certain cause beyond just living, right? So that is in a nutshell me. So let's get in now to the lesson, right? Why are we even here? Okay. Let's talk about why we're here. How do you even get started in this thing called data analysis? Well, there are three core skills that you would need to master in a particular way to be considered a data analyst, or more so to function in a way that you could analyze data that you're probably already working with, okay? So I'm going to say the order here, but it doesn't have to follow this particular order, at least for number 1 and number 2 on front of your screen. For number 1, we have Excel. Number 2 is SQL, okay? And that doesn't have to go in that order. If you are familiar with SQL, you start with SQL, right? Or if you have an affinity for programming or you have some exposure for program development, maybe SQL might be a good place to start. If programming or any sort of development work as far as computer development isn't in your history, not to worry, because a lot of times Excel has been that go-to tool for a lot of folks, right? So if that's the case for you, it's a really good thing to start with Excel, okay? So keeping that in mind, number 1 and number 2 are interchangeable. Number 3 sort of stays of where it is. And I'm going to walk you through each one of these and how you should actually use them as a data analyst. Before jumping into things, I'm going to look on the side here and just say, how you doing? Okay? How you doing? Please feel free to ask questions. Again, I'm the only person here. Usually I have a moderator, but if I do not get to your questions, and there will be a question and answer session coming up, but if I don't get to everyone's questions, please do ask the question anyway. As you know, I circle back, I tag whoever I need to tag with the question, and I respond to that question after this session, okay? So it's all about getting enlightened here. So how are we doing? How are we doing, folks? I'm going to check in the chat here really quick before I jump into how things should go as far as these 3 core skills. Okay. All right. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So let's see. Excel. Starting with Excel. Now, how would you use Microsoft Excel as a data analyst, right? So let me just step you through the phases here. Starting with this diagram here on the left, it's the international, I say international, but it's a very common symbol for databases, all right? Now, the database is the starting point in a lot of cases. Now, where does this database come from and what is it, okay? So think about point of sale data, think about marketing data, think about health data. Where does it reside? Where do you start to work from it from? What's the starting point? Well, often that starting point is a database, a repository, a place where all of the transactions and all of the data that a business generates is stored, right? So that's that first step here. You're starting with a database. Now, Excel comes into the picture where you now open Microsoft Excel and connect to that database. So now there's a number of ways you can do this, but this is one of the common ways. How does Excel get its data? From the database, right? And you could do so by either connecting directly to that database from Microsoft Excel and extracting the data that you need as a method, or oftentimes the database itself actually exports a certain dimension or a certain subset of the data that it houses. That in turn you bring into Excel and you start working with it from a data analytics standpoint. Okay, step 1. Moving the data from the database into Excel. Great. Now, usually with that first step, data isn't in a human readable form. It's in a form that is efficient and optimized for the database, but it isn't in a state or form often that us human beings can easily now take it and be actionable. So that translates to this middle step here involving what we call cleaning, data cleaning. And what is data cleaning? Data cleaning is nothing more than your raw data from the database being placed into Microsoft Excel, and then you as a data analyst are now doing a cleaning process. And cleaning involves things such as removal of spaces that might be in a body of data. If you have a space in between there, you want to clean that up and remove that space. If there are double headings, for instance, 2 lines in your column titles, that's another area that you'd want to clean up as a data analyst, right? If there are things within the data itself, the way how it's structured. Often, let's say a common thing is like first name and last name all appearing in one single column. Part of the cleaning process would involve you taking that first name, putting it in its own column, taking the last name, putting it in its own column, separating the two, right? So these are very common. Of course, there's more extensive, but these are very common functions. And the first step that what you'll do to take data that is exported or imported into Excel, and then taking it from a dirty state to a clean state. Now, how do you actually apply that? Well, you're using nothing more than Excel functions, but functions that are specific to this process. Some functions you're probably familiar with if you're working with Excel in the past. Things like match, things like index, right? And these are functions when I say things. The index function, the match function, using index and match together. Things like the pivot table, right? These are common Excel functions that we're now not just using independently, but using them in a cohesive way to form a cleaned data state as a data analyst, okay? So that is one of the primary functions in how you actually use Excel as a data analyst. Another very common way that you would use Excel is in the creation of a model, right? A model is nothing more than a spreadsheet that you would plug in values that are known to spit out values that are unknown. So for instance, if you had a model that would tell you what would be the impact of your taxes if you were to have a 10% increase in salary, for instance. A model can be built around that to give you the various answers based on the numbers that you plug in. Very common use of Excel as a data analyst in a model format, okay? All right, so one of the last steps here, which is this little diagram on the right, which is a may or may not aspect of using Excel as a data analyst. So that last step, once you've done the cleaning, once you've gotten that data to where you want it, then you can visualize that data within Excel with some of the charts and that Excel actually has natively, like a bar chart or a pie chart or a line chart, right? So these are some of the end pieces that you would use. But again, that's interchangeable. When I say that, I mean, you do not always have to have that visual piece within Microsoft Excel, just readying that data, making it into a clean state and ready for analysis is pretty much, I'd say 90% of the job in Excel, okay? All right, I am going to move on to the next thing, which is SQL. But before I dive into it, I'm going to see any questions, any comments. Again, we're going to have a question asking segment, but I just like to pause every now and again and make sure that we're all on the same page here. Awesome. Okay, let's keep pushing, okay? Now, SQL, how does that fit in to the data analytics tool bag? Okay, so we looked at Excel. Now let's look at SQL. SQL, just like Excel, starts off in the data realm of things. So you have data being signified by this database symbol all the way to the left of your screen. And we also have something in the middle that's different. So again, that data repository could be a point of sale data, marketing data, could be healthcare data, right? But it starts with that database. It's just sitting there in an optimized state for the database, pretty useless at that point for us humans, right? How do we now get the data out of the database in SQL? So slightly different from Excel, SQL has its own software that it uses to speak to that database or speak to any database. And that software comes in a number of different flavors. I use the analogy, and you probably heard this before, of sneakers, right? I'm a sneakerhead, so I love Nikes and Adidas, New Balances. New Balance, I like sneakers. Let's put it that way. There are different flavors of sneakers, but they all perform a singular function, and that is to protect your feet, right? So very similarly to these relational database management systems, which is basically the software that is used to speak to a database with SQL, relational database management systems allow you to speak to your database via the SQL language, right? And there are many flavors. So you may have heard of PostgreSQL or SQL Server or Oracle or MySQL. All of these are different brands of software that allow you to communicate with your database. They are all categorized as relational database management systems, RDBMS. Now, in your relational database management system, I know it's a little small on your screen, but that little area in the center, that is SQL syntax. And this is what you learn and write against the data that's stored in your database to give you some results, right? And those results, all the way on the right here, that diagram all the way on the right, if you notice, it's nothing more than rows and columns, which is exactly what you see in Excel. So one of your functions or main functions as a data analyst within the realm of SQL is to actually use the syntax, that is, command and learn the syntax so that you in turn know how to communicate that with that database. Now, lots of times when I speak about communicating with that database, it sounds kind of strange, but how do you actually communicate? It's nothing more than questions. How many customers are in our database from the Western region? How many customers have purchased our for sale item in the last 10 days? These are the ways that you are actually communicating with the database. You're actually querying, and if you see keyword query, a SQL query is actually answering the question that you would have asked about data stored in the database. Okay, so I hope that breaks it down a little more. The last piece in here, again, is the rows and columns. So both with Excel, just flip back here, and SQL, one of the major components after you have done your thing as a data analyst is rows and columns, okay? Valuable rows and columns, but nevertheless, the format is in rows and columns, okay? And that leads us to our third core skill, okay? So as I mentioned, both SQL and Excel, they lead to rows and columns. Yes, as I mentioned in Excel, you can have a visual component to it, but when it comes to visualizing your data, there is one tool here that I've highlighted, Microsoft Power BI, that is very robust, very flexible, and gives you the ability to work with it very easily, okay? So Microsoft Power BI, what is it? It is that visualization tool. Why do we even need visualization in this stack of core skills as a data analyst? Well, it comes down to a human thing, right? Like I mentioned, rows and columns are great and it gives you some insight, but our brains can only process that many rows and columns in terms of making some actionable decisions out of what we're seeing. Now, data visualization gives you the ability, gives us human beings the ability to use something that we already have, which is pattern recognition, right? Our ability to now take these same rows and columns and apply graphs and charts and a lot of visualization aids allows us to be that much more in depth and make much more data-centric decisions, much more correct decisions. It allows us to analyze a much wider or larger volume of data and make some sense out of it because the charts and the graphs are allowing us to summarize and easily see differences and patterns that we should probably pay attention to depending on what we're looking for. So, what is the process of Microsoft Power BI? Let's just step through. Microsoft Power BI, one of the key features is its ability to connect to one or multiple data sources, right? So just as in the past, or the last couple slides, Microsoft Power BI has the ability to connect to an Excel spreadsheet and at the very same time connect to its SQL Server database, for instance, or a Postgres database or a MySQL database, and at the same time connect to a website, and at the same time connect to a flat file. I think you get the point. Its ability, one of the key components of it is its ability to connect to multiple data sources easily, right? And that's that just first step here. The second step in the Microsoft Power BI journey is similar to Excel in that once you connect to all these various sources, now you actually have to clean that data, right? You have to now clean that data and ready it very much in the same step as Excel does. You take it from the state that is stored in the database, and then now you actually make it a lot more readable and ready to be analyzed. And that's your function as a data analyst. Within Microsoft Power BI, there is something that is similar to Excel. So good news for the Excel folks, right? So Power Query is what's used by Microsoft Power BI to perform a lot of the manipulation of data, very similar to Excel. If you are familiar with Excel, again, it also uses a language that is similar to Excel. So in Microsoft Power BI, you use a language that's called DAX, D-A-X, and that's what allows you to further manipulate and work with the data. Good news again with Microsoft Power BI is you don't necessarily have to know DAX to become an efficient provider of data visualizations. This tool is very easy. It allows you to drag and drop virtually fields into your view. But again, you're going to leverage a lot of what you are exposed to in SQL in Microsoft Power BI, which is why I put the order like that. You're definitely going to be better learning SQL before going to Microsoft Power BI. But that being said, once you get there, it's not that crazy, it's not that hard, and it's actually meant to be easy. Okay, so the last piece here, which is the picture all the way in the right, it excels, Microsoft Power BI that is, excels at data visualization. There's a plethora of visualization types and choices, and you can easily bring that into your view. Now, you usually create things like reports and dashboards specific to the audiences that are requesting them, right? So for instance, a C-suite audience may want to have dashboards that tells them the overall health of their business, right? And that's something that you can easily provide. Another very cool advantage of Microsoft Power BI, it really drives a data-driven culture in a business, right? And that is done by its ease of shareability. So after you have a dashboard just like this, you can easily share it with a coworker and start a conversation. Say, hey, I've noticed that the Western region has an abnormally high volume today. Can you take a look at that? Does that seem strange to you? And you start conversations from actual factual data that you are analyzing instead of just something that you're pulling out of the sky. Okay, so awesome addition to the skill sets. And this is what I'd say is the third core skill set. Okay, I'm going to pause for a quick moment, see if anyone has any questions. Feel free to ask. Again, there is going to have a question asking session coming up. And what I'm going to do next is just kind of give you a rundown of some of the courses that's going to help you get upskilled in these particular areas. Okay, so before I do that, how are we feeling? How are we doing? Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. Excellent. Okay. By the way, if you cannot stay for the whole thing, or if you want any sort of reminders of what we've talked about, you can navigate to this link right here, and it will tell you everything that I spoke about. By the way, I should have put that up a little earlier, but anyone who is not able to make it to the end or just kind of wants a refresher, all of the courses that I'm about to go through, everything is in this document that you can get to, and that's that link that I just displayed at the bottom of your screen. Okay? All right, let's keep pushing. Let's go forward to the next thing. So, as I mentioned, now that we know a little bit about the 3 core skills, I'll say 2 things. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the skills that's going to get you here, and I'm not going to dwell on these too much. Like I mentioned, all of this information is going to be in that link that you can easily download a PDF that goes along with this. Okay. So before I talk about these courses a little, also the 3 core skills are the 3 core skills, as I mentioned. Now that these skills are going to get you up, running, and able to be very effective in any environment that you execute these skills in. The one thing I do want you to know too, that data analyst also has other skills that they can rely on and that do rely on that fall into their repertoire of tools. And that is sometimes you will hear of Python. Python is another programming language that you use to augment your data analytics skills. You can use other visualization programs like Tableau. They also help you augment your visualization skills. But again, there are others that you could add on to what we just talked about. These 3 are indeed the 3 core skills that will get you up and running. Okay. All right. So in front of you here, we have some recommended courses for Excel. And these are some of the courses that are available right here on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn Learning, definitely these are some awesome courses. By the way, I've vetted these courses myself. So I think they're excellent resources that gets you up to speed with some of these skills that we just talked about. Okay. Next, we have some of the recommended courses for SQL. And we have, again, some really great resources that's going to get you confident with this language. SQL, by the way, is not complicated. It's what's called very human language. I'll put it human readable language, meaning that it takes, even though it's coding and syntax, it takes a lot of the human speech, very natural language, so that it in turn, what that translates to is that it's not super difficult to learn and master, right? You just get the core concepts and then you're off to the races. Very powerful, actually. Okay. And last but not least are some Power BI recommended courses. Again, really good starting blocks if you're getting into this field and just want to get some familiar and get really confident with it. Some really great resources. Again, I'm flipping through these. Don't worry about it. Just go to that link at the bottom and you can actually download everything that I'm talking about here, including these courses that I'm displaying. Okay. All right. As I mentioned, we're going to stop for a small segment. Any questions? I'm going to do my best. Won't be super long here, but I'll still pause, see if there are any questions, and we can clear them up. And stick around because for those that are in the room, we still have some giveaways, right? We have some cool giveaways, some cool prizes. So stick around. It's going to be worth your while to stick around. Okay. All right. Any questions, folks? I'm going to pause for a little bit, maybe a couple moments. Please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. And excellent forum to do so. Okay. I'm going to just pop on the screen here so you don't feel like you're talking to no one. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions. If you do, just drop it in the chat. I'll be happy to ask, happy to answer, happy to assist in any way I can. Okay. All right. I'm going to pause for a few moments. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Not in the chat, but I do see a question on, so is Power BI the only visualization tool that you can use? Good question. However, as I mentioned, Power BI isn't the only tool. It's just one of the tools, right? By the way, all of these tools, pretty much, you don't have to go in the route of learning SQL from a particular provider, right? It is one of the choices. Similarly to Power BI, it is a choice. Prior to Power BI being this popular, and I think it's becoming more and more popular because Microsoft is actively working on this product, Tableau has and still is pretty much been a dominant visualization tool in the data analytics track. Okay, so Tableau is one of those visualization tools. There are others like Domo, for instance, that are also serving the same purpose. So much like SQL, much like SQL Server, much like MySQL, and all of these relational database management systems, there are different flavors, all performing the same functions. No different from the visualization piece. Power BI has other types of software that does the same thing. It's just one of the choices that you can use. It's a really good question, though. Okay. All right. I'm going to keep pushing here, and we're going. If there are no more questions, feel free to ask again at the end. But I am going to get to the giveaway part of things. Okay. So let's see. Right here, we have a couple prizes. Actually, number one is a 24-hour free access to the top 5 things to know in SQL. That's actually my course on LinkedIn Learning. But I'm going to do even better with this one. If you download that link, from that link, you download the PDF, which gives you the link to the course, you're going to get not just 24 hours, but the entire month, so the remainder of the month in September. Okay. If you have access to my course throughout the end of the month on LinkedIn Learning, and that's my gift to you. This is also in recognition of SQL being identified as a skill that future-proofs your career, right? A really important initiative that LinkedIn as well is embracing. And we've identified skill sets that's literally going to future-proof your career. And this means that skill sets that are going to be in heavy demand for years to come. SQL is certainly being identified as one of those skill sets, right? Data analytics on the whole is one of those skill sets, okay? So in your benefit. So definitely take advantage of that. That is my gift to you. As I mentioned, the guide is absolutely free as well, and that's what you get via the link. If you go to that link, you can certainly download the Where to Get Started with Data PDF, okay? Last but not least, for one lucky person, and I think it's the odds look great right now because in the room, I know we have a few folks. So for the folks that actually participate in this, I have one LinkedIn premium subscription, which is free for 3 months, which gives you really great features, by the way. If you haven't used it before, you're going to really love it. And I'm going to do so in 1 sec by asking you to put hashtag data no doubt 1 sec into the chat. I'm going to set things up. I'm going to share my screen. So give me 1 sec to get this going. Okay. Screen is going to look a little weird as I start sharing it, but I'm going to put that up there. Okay. So now, if you wouldn't mind, and if you don't mind 3 free months of LinkedIn Premium, now's your chance to be entered into this competition and see who wins. So please put in the chat hashtag data no doubt, hashtag DATANODOUBT, and that is going to give you the opportunity to win 3 free months of LinkedIn Premium subscription. Okay. While you do that, awesome. Let me try to get to a question while you do that. LinkedIn courses are enough, or should I take a specific certification in each course? So that's a great question. That's a great question. Keep putting in the data, no doubt, but I'm going to answer that question in the meantime. So LinkedIn Learning is an excellent resource for giving you the skills that you need. If you look on the platform, you'll see that not just my course, but there's a plethora of other courses that's really going to get you upskilled. I always tell folks in terms of what you need to feel ready, I always ask, how do you learn best, right? There are a lot of different forms of learning today, and luckily it's good to be alive today with all of the technologies that we have. But then there's some good old school things, right? Books, right? I still appreciate a good book, right? That might be a good form of absorbing some of the materials. The actual courses, yes, on LinkedIn, but there are other areas as well, and as well as live, right? If you're teaching, if you're the type of individual that likes to learn from someone in a live forum, that might be what you might need as well. So I'd say definitely explore the different mediums that appeal to you or like you learn best with, and definitely pursue that. Beyond this, feel free to give me a shout out or a call. Let me shout out, but feel free to contact me with questions. Right, I'm something I'm really passionate about. Feel free beyond this session, ask me questions. That's why I'm here. It's the difference maker. By the way, folks, for myself, learning this stuff really became real when I started to reach out to others. When I started to speak to other people in the field, I got my deepest understanding of where I stood and where I needed to be. So feel free to do that. It's a pay it forward for me. So feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to give whatever advice or examples that I can. All right. I see we have all the folks entered in. I'm going to hit the draw button now. We'll see who's the lucky winner. And let's see. Scott Smith. Scott Smith, you are the lucky winner. You are the winner of 3 months of free LinkedIn Premium. Congratulations. That is awesome. That is awesome, awesome, awesome. Yes, sir. You have just won, Scott Smith. So how do you claim your prize? Just feel free to message me on LinkedIn. Just let me know, hey, Scott, hey, it's me. I just won. And I'll be happy to hook you up with your LinkedIn Premium 3-month of free subscription. Great job. Great job, Scott. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here really quick. Jump back over. And at this point, I'm going to wind on down. Just let you know that awesome gifts. Thank you for participating. Here's a little bit more information about Walter Shields Data Academy, the things that we provide, the avenues of learning that we provide, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have about this. Okay, so as we wrap up here, one thing I'd like to let you know is that I am deeply, deeply appreciative of you deciding to spend your time here. I'm more so recognizing of your efforts to want to make change for the better happen, and just recognizing that there are things that we can do to upskill and give ourselves a better foot and a better stronghold in whatever that we pursue. So I want to thank you so much for showing up. It's half the battle is already in that, and just being involved in this. Beyond this session, like I mentioned, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. I'm not going to send anyone in any other direction except let's try to figure things out. Let's try to get questions answered. And let's try to get you in a better position. Okay. So I really appreciate your time spent with me here. And awesome. Thanks. Big up Omar. Big up all the people in the room. Thank you so much, folks. On that note, I am going to wrap things up and tell you if there's anything beyond this session. Again, feel free to reach out, download the PDF. And if you couldn't get any of those, again, just reach out to me and I'll be happy to supply you with that. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much once again. And with that, enjoy the rest of your day and talk to you soon. By the way, next week we will be having another live stream. Look out for the invite that should go out today. Okay. All right. Thank you so much once again. Bye now.